I like to believe that there is a heaven. I like to believe that I will see my loved ones again one day, or that there is somewhere positive and great that we will go, because death is really fucking scary. So, I don't want to believe that that's the end. And that's why I choose to believe it. Like, it's very simple. It's not, I'm not coming up with it's because I read it in this book, or I read it because the Bible or the Torah or something says it. So I feel comfort in it. So I want to believe that.
I'm Steve Saporn. This is the Neuro's Journey. 38, 5 months pregnant, Nerissa Balland was diagnosed with cancer. The cancer returned. The treatments failed. She stopped chemo and chose to heal herself. Now almost 10 years cancer-free. She's a visual artist, one of the youngest ever accepted into Pratt's MFA program. She creates mixed media work, exploring self-love, acceptance, and protection. She also happens to be my niece, and she made a painting of my life. In this conversation, we talk about why art might be one of the most underrated ways to process what words can't reach. What happens when you turn your trauma into something you can actually see. The moment she decided to stop fighting her body and start listening to it. How she learned to hear her intuition instead of drowning it out. This is Nerissa Balland, artist, survivor, truth teller, and someone who proves you can be broken and still create something beautiful.
I've known you your whole life, and honestly, reading your bio was exhausting just to actually even read it, not to do all those things. And you've always been this kind of driven person. You got an MFA from Pratt, you worked in corporate art world, you've done all these different things. But the through line through it all is there's some version of art going on here. So what I'm looking for is some of your big turning points in life, and before they happen, who were you the person internally, personally, before life put things in front of you and made you change? And what was that background like until we get to your turning point?
So I'd say, I think growing up, there was always a creative element of some kind in my life. And that was something I always gravitated towards. And I probably gravitated towards it because I wasn't an amazing student. I was average. And art seemed to be something that I really excelled in. And I think naturally human beings tend to gravitate towards what they're good at and what they seem to get praise and validation for. So I always identified as an artist or someone in the arts or someone who is creative. So I stuck to that in a sense growing up as a person, always able to, what I thought at the time, be pretty flexible. Later, we'll talk about that's not actually the case. But I thought that I was. And primarily, I probably thought I was a pretty flexible person because I was constantly changing. So I adapted to changing environments, whether it could be the nucleus of a family, changing in that environment. I had a mother who was a single mother growing up, to then she was remarried. That dynamic changed in our household. I moved neighborhoods, I moved schools, just normal things I think that people undergo that they have to if they have environments that change in general. So I would say that I pivoted a lot, and that set a good groundwork for later in life. As I continued to make pivots, I became comfortable in that because I was used to it. I definitely was more impulsive in my earlier life than I am in my adult life. And when I say adult life, I'm going to say 40 and over. That's my adult life. And so I think that I had impulsive behaviors, I had addictive personalities, whether it had to do with food or substances, anything that I clung to very quickly. I also think I never really fully felt accepted anywhere. And I was longing for some group somewhere. I felt a disconnectedness. So I always had a lot of friends. I was never a loner or somebody that was isolated anyway. I actually surrounded myself by a lot of people, different groups, and moved around, but I never quite felt a connectedness to a group. But yet I really longed for it. And there could be a lot of ways. I had a different last name than my mother. You know, she had a new last name, and I had my original biological father's last name. She turned to her maiden name. There were little slices of life that kind of always made me feel that I never quite belonged or like fit in. My biological father was English and Welsh, but really American, but of that descent. And my mother's side, Greek. So raised in a Greek environment, but always being half Greek, never totally Greek enough. Those little things for me growing up led me down a narrative in my own mind of like, I didn't belong, or I was different, or I was also creative. So that also made me a little bit different than other people when I was growing up. Today, now like everybody can be creative in some capacity, but back then it was a little bit more traditional in terms of like a grouping that you would have to fit into in the arts. I grew up with a lot of adaptability to make changes, some for the positive, some not so much for the positive, and having a level of being able to pivot, which I used to call flexibility, it turns out was really inflexible, with a lot of impulsivity, but also a drive, always wanting to strive to be whatever the best was in that category. But unlike some people who have a drive like that, my drive wasn't always a healthy way to get there. So I definitely was always searching for ways to get to the top without experiencing the journey to get there. And it was more important for me to like have a credential of something than it was for me to have that learning process to get to the credential. So little things along the way that didn't quite connect, but it worked well enough that I was able to make my way through life relatively successful until a turning point.
So I'm interested in, you're going into Pratt. I'm assuming now you're a professional fine artist and you create works of art. I'm assuming that's what you thought you were going to be coming out of Pratt. So how did life shift you into what I would call corporate art, working on brands and other companies and all that? What's the internal process from, is that what you always wanted to do, or was there something going on that pushed you in that direction?
Great question. So when I went to graduate school, I thought, yes, I will come out and I will be a painter in New York City and I'm gonna kill it. Very quickly, when I entered Pratt, I was also quite young, one of the youngest students accepted ever into the program was me and one other, Nerissa Balland, who was in the class with me. We were the two youngest students that Pratt had ever accepted in the MFA program. Mostly they did not accept students coming right out of college. They wanted you to have some life and work experience before coming into a program like theirs. And so we were with a lot of older people who were a little bit more established in life or had families and so forth. So I was young. And I say that because I now recognize there's probably a good reason that they choose people that have gone through some experiences, work experiences, art in general, like where do they fit in the world, to make a decision to go back to getting an MFA versus just rolling from undergraduate into a graduate program. I really went into a graduate program immediately because I didn't know what to do. And I didn't have, with a BFA, where was I going? I still didn't have quite like any type of mentorship. And I didn't come from a family of creatives that could help guide me in that way. So it seemed like graduate school was the right way to just keep going to find some semblance of direction. When I went to New York, I came from, was pretty talented, well-acclaimed student at University of Maryland for my undergrad, kind of like big fish in a smaller pond, even though it's a big school, but the department was small. And the art community in Maryland was small at the time. when I went to New York, I had a very rude awakening that I wasn't that special. And that was very hard, like right away to come right in, like, wow, there are so many amazing people. Instead of embracing an environment with so many creative people, I became more introverted in the sense of worried, because that competition didn't spark, it scared me versus sparked me to like move into, I'm going to be like the top of this. I felt really insecure. And I felt like, wow, maybe I don't have the experience that a lot of these other people have right now. And like, how did I get accepted? Why do they want me here? Like a lot of self-doubt. And I struggled a lot. Actually, my first year in school, I went home and said I wanted to quit after the first semester. And it was my dad who was like, if you quit now, no one knows that you even achieved getting to this school. So why don't you just finish it? And then if that's not what you want to do, then you go on to something else, but at least start where you finish. So I said, okay. And when I was graduating, it was around 9/11. That was a time when all of the arts and anything like industry-wise that was like not an essential just started to plummet in terms of jobs or opportunities. So I decided to extend my MFA process and go to Denmark and study with the school overseas and learn about digital design and graphic design, because that seemed to be at the time like the wave of the future of where things were going artistically, maybe more so than fine art that I could make a living off of and not be like a starving artist in New York City. So I went that route. It wasn't what I initially thought, but I thought that's how I can pivot. I could make money. I could have health insurance, I could have benefits, and it wasn't necessarily really what I wanted to do, but it's where I saw an opportunity, an opening that could be feasible, and I could remain in New York and I could pay rent and I could stay there versus having to like leave grad school and then move home.
And were you able to even know that you didn't want to do that at the time? You know how sometimes your nervous system gets so riled up to get safe that you just do things to do that. Were you conscious in your decision making to be like, yeah, this isn't exactly what I want, but I want to live in New York and I want some money.
Right. What I wanted was not, and I loved the friends that I made dearly in school, but they were okay to like live in a warehouse all together and like a mattress on the floor and just like paint and like, oh, we're going to get all of this out. We're going to go, we had no social media or anything. So you had slide books and slides to put in and walk around and hand your book to galleries, and that just seemed awfully daunting to me and I didn't want to do that. And I also just didn't want to live with like a bunch of people on a floor in a warehouse somewhere. So I said, all right, where are the sacrifices I'm going to make? Okay, I can still maybe get art in this way and do it this way, although it was a very new medium that I didn't know a lot about. So I definitely had to quickly come up the curve because there were degrees in those mediums and people were hiring people with their masters in design versus fine art. So few pivots, but I don't know that at the time, I think I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I was looking for some way to survive and find a way to do art. And again, no mentor. Like even in the school systems then, which I'm glad to see now things are changing, but like when you pay all this money to go for a master's degree, you're looking for like gems, like, hey, how do I survive as an artist? How do we make money? How do you charge for work? Where do you put a price on it? How do you figure these things out? Because I didn't have a business background. So I quickly had to try to figure out, like, I don't know what do you charge? What do you want to pay for? That's what I'm going to charge. Like that didn't make any sense. So at least I came from a family of business-minded people, and I recognized like I need to do something that I'm going to be able to make money because my parents aren't going to support me forever, and this is the end of the line, which was scary. So I don't know that I jumped into knowing that so much at the time. I was more excited, like, and impulsive, and like, hey, there's another new avenue, and we can figure this out, and we're going to go this way.
Was there a sense of loss, you thought, at that time for you? Or is it more just, I'm going this direction?
No, it was definitely a sense of loss, like maybe I gave up too quickly and I didn't like investigate a little further. I just wanted the quick way, like, how do I make a buck? How do I survive and have some money?
And that chapter lasted a couple decades, right?
Yeah.
Working in New York. And as I remember, you walking around in high heels so much, you had to have foot surgery. So you were really shucking and jiving on that thing. And so there's a point at which you now are an art educator in arts and healing, and you're a fine artist, and something had to happen to shift things up. What changed?
Yeah. So for me, the most monumental change in my life was when I was diagnosed with cancer at 38 years old. And I was pregnant at the time, 5.5 months pregnant when I was diagnosed. I will caveat, because usually right away people say, look at you when you say diagnosed with cancer, and I'm cancer free now. It'll be almost 8 years coming up. But yeah, I was diagnosed with cancer radically. I remember the moment I was on a conference call. Ironically enough, I was hiding from Zika outbreak. So I was working at home in a time when working remotely was not common. But luckily, because I was pregnant and in Miami, there was a Zika outbreak, which affected pregnant people greatly from mosquito bites, for anyone that doesn't know about Zika. So I was working at home. And I was on a conference call, and then I kept getting pings and texts and calls coming in. And it was my doctor, who's actually also a good friend of ours, as well as my husband. And I'm like, what's going on? First of all, these people never call me during the day. Like, I don't ever talk to them. And so I finished the conference call, was like, what's going on? And then basically was told I was diagnosed with melanoma, which is cancer. I had something biopsied, a mole on the back biopsied. And at first, I just felt shock. And the second thing I thought, well, but this isn't real cancer. I was like, in my eyes, which is fascinating, I just thought, well, like, it's skin cancer, so we scrape more of it away and it'll disappear, and like, okay. And then it was like, unfortunately, that's not like what's happening here. You have to go to an oncologist, and like no more of the dermatologist. Like, there's no more we can do here. You have to actually see an oncologist. So then that became really more like, well, but why? It's not like it's something you scraped off. And it's like, well, it could travel. And I started to learn about a lot that I didn't know about skin cancer.
And so now you're 5 months pregnant, and you're going between oncologist and OBGYN visits.
Yeah.
Which has got to be not an easy kind of dynamic to play in.
No, it's not. And I had a 15-month-old at home. So I had a very young child at home, one in utero, and then trying to sort out, what does this cancer diagnosis mean? And a lot of things came up along the way. One was I had doctors, the first doctor I saw said I had to terminate the pregnancy, or he couldn't treat me. I think that was just more of a liability, and he didn't want to deal with someone that was pregnant, and the cancer aspect of how to go about what his protocol for treatment would be. I finally found a doctor that said, you don't have to terminate. We can do some things here. Maybe you'll have the baby a little bit early when it's safe, and then we can go forward with more treatments. So I was in a limbo state for a while during the pregnancy till he was born, my second son, like not really knowing how evolved this cancer was in my body, but slow enough to be able to deliver him only at like 37 weeks instead of the 42 weeks or whatever. And then go on from there. That's really when after having him, the real like cancer journey for me started, with many surgeries and a lot of immunotherapy for 8 months, and then the cancer returned. And then when the cancer returned, I found out I was pregnant again, which was interesting because my children are IVF, and I was told I couldn't get pregnant. So that was a pregnancy I couldn't keep because I was in the midst of returning to surgeries and possibly more chemo. And was said, like, this pregnancy doesn't matter if you keep it. I mean, like, you can't keep it right now. I had a hard time with that because the doctor's office that I went to also said to me in the OBGYN when we were supposed to kind of do my next surgery to remove more lymph nodes of where the cancer had spread, and then kind of do this DNC process, to abort the baby, but I would be under, and it would kind of be like a nap, as if almost like I never knew I was pregnant and had to deal with it. Unfortunately, that didn't really happen that way. When I went in and I did a ultrasound, the doctors shared with me that the fetus seemed fine. And even though I had been going through immunotherapies, PET scans, and all of these things, that at the moment that the fetus seemed fine, so their office wouldn't complete that type of procedure because ethically they didn't believe in it. That was really hard to hear, and it was about 48 hours before the procedure was supposed to happen, and I didn't know that that was an option, that they could back out. Okay. And then just send me to an abortion doctor, sort of, that would do it privately and go forward. So this all actually happened on the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, which is supposed to be a time you're really at synagogue a lot, and you're celebrating. I was leaving a synagogue with a call from a doctor that you need to go now and do it because your surgery's on Monday. So I had to really, this was a Friday and I needed to take care of it. So as I'm doing that and rushed to this place that could perform this service, I am then there, and then I'm getting a call from my oncologist saying, we now see that it may have spread to your bones, so you need to go immediately after this to the emergency room. We need to do some MRIs. We can't do the surgery that we said if, in fact, the cancer has spread to your bones. We have to do something different. Now I'm already drugged up on whatever they give you while you're going to have this procedure. And then they had a problem with MRI because you're like, she's taking drugs. And I'm like, I'm not on drugs. This is from the last procedure that happened 1 hour ago. And so it was a whirlwind of stuff happening on a holiday that's supposed to be very special. And out of Jewish holidays is probably one of the more happy ones. We don't have a lot of happy holidays. So I remember it vividly. And things just started to fall for me in a lot of ways. And I think, as I look back on it, I say cancer was my biggest challenge, and it opened an opportunity to become my greatest gift. I was not able to say that for many years, but it did get me to that point to understand the journey that I was taking and all the little things in between as a hiccup or a side effect to the cancer that also happened. Opened up a lot of doors for me. But it was a very difficult time, and I wouldn't say that people in their life have to get to a terminal illness. I mean, I really wasn't doing well. It wasn't a good prognosis that the cancer had returned, because it meant that the medications and the things I was doing were failing in the doctor's eyes. So once it had returned for me, there was again okay, we'll do this and we'll try this chemo. We'll do this. The chemo I was not a candidate for. We tried for 6 weeks until I finally said I'm done, which was really hard for, I think, even my doctors and my husband to accept, to say I'm not going to do any more treatment. I'm going to wait and see. We've cleaned the cancer out. Technically, it's not my body. So we're going to do, medically, they call it watch and wait, which is a terrible marketing term. I tell them every time, I'm like, somebody needs to work on this in the cancer marketing department, because this is not positive thinking here, watch and wait. Because the prognosis of what they told me was if I continued on the path of taking more medicine, it was give me 11% chance more of survival. That seemed very low to me for all of the side effects and everything that I was experiencing along the way, where I had higher percentages of surviving and those things weren't working.
And so did this kind of go down when you were visiting me in Boulder?
Yeah, this was the second half of it. That was the second reoccurrence of cancer. That was that portion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what was, because you met with my men's group leader, Ravane Bakal, who's been an incredible force for good in my life. And I know you had a pretty decent experience with that. How did that change things for you?
It was actually life-changing to think that you could meet an individual that you've never met before and spend like 2 hours with them and then like walk out with like a light switch that just like went on. Is really, really powerful. When I met with him, the takeaways that I got from it and some of his ways of working with you, I really loved. And I actually use it sometimes with people that I was working with later. But it was really it was what started me on the journey of understanding more about how our brains work and how we script our own stories. So some of our stories, obviously through experiences and things that we have, are written, but it's our perception of those stories on how they're interpreted. So, believing in something, or I went in with him and
22
what do you want to talk
veterans
about? I'm
die
like,
by
oh my God,
suicide every day. And in the next
pull out
60
the
seconds,
scroll of like
I'm going to show
100
you how
things
you
I have
can
to
help
talk
save
about. But
one.
I guess
Stanford
I was
found
like,
one
I
eye
guess cancer.
to gain
I
treatment
kind of
dropped
went in there and I
suicidal
said, like,
thoughts
I'm
in
going to die.
veterans from
And he was like,
47%
well, we're all going to die
7%.
someday.
But it's illegal
right?
here.
And I'm like,
so our
yeah, but I'm
veterans
going
are
to die
flying to
of
Mexico
cancer.
on their
He's like,
own dime
okay,
just
so
to heal.
is that what you
And
want to
they're
talk
coming
about?
home to
I said,
nothing.
okay, well, let's
That's
talk.
why Tony Glaze is building one
And I was a little bit arrogant,
an integration
I think,
center in Texas where
and saying,
couples
like,
heal
how's this
together.
guy going to try
where
to tell
veterans
me
aren't forgotten.
you're not going
Where
to die
they
from
finally
cancer
get the
because you
thank you
can't.
this country
And so,
owes them.
but he
Ibogaine
did,
opens the
in a
door.
really fascinating
Integration
way.
walks you
And,
through it. And that's what One and Done does.
I'm
Go
ever
to
so thankful that I had that
oneanddone.org and
experience
donate.
with him.
Any amount
It was
helps.
very eye-opening
They served us.
to show
Let's
me
serve them back.
what was true
oneanddone.org.
and what I was scripting in my mind, or like what the story I was telling myself. So every person you ever known that has cancer, have they died? And I said, yes. They have. Like the immediate people in my life that have cancer, they've died from cancer. So this is why I feel I'm going to die from cancer. So he's like, okay, fair. Let's talk about people like you might not know that have had cancer. Their success stories. Has everyone died? No. Okay, so it's absolutely not true that every person dies from cancer. Okay, all right, fine. You win. You win. You got it. And we kind of started to uncover some of the beliefs that were holding me back and restricting me a lot to move forward. But he did a great job. And he did. He propelled me to want to learn more and find out more about how we operate, how our brains operate. And it drove me down a path after that meeting with him. I came home, was really interested in learning more. I started to research and find out about two areas that fascinated me. One in CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and NLP, which is just a fancy word for neuro-linguistics programming, which is like brain language. And slowly those two areas that I started taking coursework in and was like really fascinated with, all of a sudden a pivot in art came up with it as arts and health, arts and medicine, therapeutic arts, which at the time I didn't really know much about. I knew there's art therapy, and that's quite different because art therapy itself, and it's really just the semantics of words, but they mean very different things. Art therapy goes down the mental health aspect of where you are working to diagnose something and have this explorative process through the arts to work on mental health. Therapeutic arts is different, right? It enhances your well-being through the arts, but we're not trying to get to a diagnosis of anything. We're trying to calm the central nervous system down and give tools and ways for people to work on cognitive abilities for things, but we're not diagnosing anything. We're not going down that route. So when I saw these 3 buckets, I spent like after being with him, probably the next, 5 years working and researching and like finding ways, because I was fascinated how it all fit together.
So let me ask you a question, because we were talking about turning points, right? Mm-hmm. And, there's the cancer diagnosis, but kind of what I hear, and tell me if I'm wrong, a big turning point was where you kind of realized that the stories that you tell in your mind might not actually be true.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that all of a sudden you've gone to, now you're in all these different modalities and all that, because you're realizing, we deceive ourselves all the time, and oftentimes it's not pretty. And so that's like a big kind of psychological turning point for you. And it seems like what you said opened you up to different sort of things and different ways of being an artist.
Yes.
You were an artist, and then you kind of got into your, I need to make money phase and all that we all have done, especially if you come from our family, Yes. But then you have this, this thing that shakes your world. I mean, a cancer diagnosis shakes anyone's world, but even multiple years into that, there's a 2-hour moment in your life where the way that you think changed.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, everything's changed.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you've kind of talked about some of the techniques that you've used, but could I say that you became a lot more curious about things?
Yeah.
I don't, just because I'm thinking about it, doesn't mean that it's this way. I'm going to look at all these different things. So there's like a lot of curiosity involved. And then to me, when you're sitting with these things, there's courage, right? You need to be able to really explore and challenge yourself. You might have to, sit with some difficult things. So how do curiosity and courage, and action, those are for me, just that I have I like putting values on things. So my businesses have values, even my relationship, we have like what we do. And for my healing journey, that's what I've named it. I'm curious, I'm courageous, and I take action, because I don't know everything that's fucking going on. I know there's a lot of scary shit that happened to me that I'm not that comfortable kind of sitting with. And none of that matters if you don't do anything. So how would those things, that's my framework. I'm not saying it's yours, but it sounds like from what I'm hearing, all 3 of those aspects were a big part of your turning point and shift to a new way of being, really.
Yeah. I think a few things happened. One, I recognized there were ways I could fix myself. And I do it in quotations, because maybe fixing isn't the, best way to articulate it. But I had always felt like maybe I was not worthy enough, I wasn't good enough, or to change, to make a difference. And I started to recognize, no, I don't know that I really do believe that. Because if I really did believe that, I wouldn't have gotten as far as I have. I would have given up, and I'd never give up on anything. So I didn't really want to give up on myself, but I recognized that I needed to get out of my own way. And I was the one that was in my own way for my own growth. And why was I doing that to myself? Why was I even an obstacle for myself? And I wanted to uncover that more, and I wanted to understand it. So much so that I would be able to fix it, so to speak. So that's why I went on this journey on finding out lots of different modalities and what made sense and what did I gravitate to, what felt real versus maybe somewhere I wanted to fit in, but it really wasn't me. And I was fascinated at how much you have the ability to make changes. And I wanted to make a change. And really the reality I wanted to make changes is because I felt like I was always living some portion of not something that I wanted to do. Every job that I had was to make more money, or to climb some kind of a ladder corporately, or then to become an entrepreneur and have my own business. And something was like grow, 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 but never stopping, never understanding along the way, just like pummeling through, instead of like a sprint versus a marathon. And I never could slow down. For instance, I got kicked out of 3 yoga classes as an adult, because I was talking to people. Like I wasn't comfortable to sit in these classes and like be with myself. Like I could not be with myself. And I wanted to understand, like, if I can't be with myself, why the fuck does anyone else want to be with me? Do you know what I mean? Like, if there's one person that should want to be with me, it should be me. Right. And I can't stand myself. Like, why is there so much like self-loathing happening here? So I wanted to understand it, and I wanted to understand the narratives that I was creating, but I felt that I couldn't really understand it until I started to understand the science of how things worked. And then I just like, you couldn't get me out of the way. It was like became everything that I was doing.
22 veterans die by suicide every day. And in the next 60 seconds, I'm going to show you how you can help save one. Stanford found one ibogaine treatment dropped suicidal thoughts in veterans from 47% to 7%. But it's illegal here. So our veterans are flying to Mexico on their own dime just to heal, and they're coming home to nothing. That's why Tony Glaze is building One and Done, an integration center in Texas where couples heal together, where veterans aren't forgotten, where they finally get the thank you this country owes them. Ibogaine opens the door, integration walks you through it. And that's what One and Done does. Go to oneanddone.org and donate. Any amount helps. They served us. Let's serve them back. oneanddone.org.
So the same little art powerhouse was now the healing.
Like, now I'm going on, and I was like, this is it. And now I found my path. I'm going to work with other people. And I tried it for a bit, and that wasn't for me.
Working with other people. You're saying,
yeah, like I started getting all of these like designations and coursework that I could do in therapy to work with people. And I found, I interviewed about 100 different women who were young women, because I wanted to write a book about the art of healing from cancer. And I have hours and hours, so much footage of calls and videos with people getting their stories, because I wanted to be a compilation, not just mine. I learned so much from that. That in itself was like a therapy session, and also very eye-opening for me. And I never wrote the book. It became too much for me. I was taking in too much of everyone else's stories. And I started to get diluted from like what was me to what was them. I was trying to relate and then not relate. And it took a lot of energy out of me. And begin to think about these people and like what they were going through all the time. And then I was like, all right, this isn't a healthy way to approach helping other people. So that maybe this isn't the way directly. And I kind of found my way, navigating, trying different things out. I think I did things very traditionally and trying to like look for fields or things. Again, where can I go to climb the ladder to be like the best therapist that could help people or coach or this, and, not where I landed. But I think also with 2020 happened for me, like everybody, we're home playing lots of different roles. And that time was also very introspective. So I was doing more to get certifications in areas that were helping me. And really all along, this was just all my therapy, like for me in different ways, not necessarily going to see one particular person. But this was my way of finding outlets for myself that worked, that I could find direction.
So I'm kind of interested in this notion of how you found these outlets, right? Because, you tell the story of being in a yoga class, 3 yoga classes, being kicked out for talking, which, to me sounds like somebody who's like not comfortable in silence, not comfortable with their own self. And I know a lot about that. And, for my own healing journey, like intuition and listening to that voice, has really come online in the past 3 years. I'm 56. So, 53 years of not being able to hear it. But when I hear your story, I see somebody who's trusting their intuition a lot. I mean, it can't be easy to be 5 months pregnant and have a world famous cancer doctor tell you to abort your pregnancy. And you say, no, I know what I'm going to do, or here's these treatments, like I've gone through years of it and I've got this chance. 11% might not sound like a lot to you, but I'm sure it sounded like a lot to your husband and the other members of your family. And it couldn't have been the easiest decision. The easy decision would have been like, I'm doing everything, right? But you had to listen to that voice, right? Yeah. And so like, a question is, and for people who are on this journey, is cultivating a listening to your own self and how important it is. And how has your life shifted for the better as you got more of a relationship with that, the wise voice inside of you, the one that's calm, the one that's not begging for your attention or screaming, those are all the fucked up ones. But the one that is like wise and has your back is kind of also not loud. And so you need to tap into it, right? And so I guess I'm wondering how that has changed your life and if there's any sort of thing that you think like is important for people to get more tapped into their intuition so they can be their own guide to healing. I think it's great to hear from people and all these conversations are great, but it's everyone's responsibility to heal themselves.
Yeah. So I think for me, it comes from a place of, and it's interesting that you use those words like the voice, right? I recognized when I lived, I'll say, more in a toxic space. And when I say a toxic space, for me, before cancer, really just means I wasn't living a life that felt true or genuine. I felt like I was constantly comparing myself to friends or neighbors or people I didn't know or celebrities, people I did know, everything around, and like feeling like I was behind and I needed to have more. Like, nothing was about have more inside or peace or happiness. It was just like tangible things. Or it's never enough. If I made one thing, on to the next. Like I didn't really celebrate it too long because now it's in the past and now we have to go to the next level for stuff. And until I could slow myself down a bit and then say, enjoy the moments, there were little clips of things that would happen. And I recognized in other people that I also was doing that I shouldn't do, that I would want to help to correct for them to see something. But then I'd say, but I'm doing the exact same thing here, So there was a lot of awareness that just kind of opened up where I always was a person that have always been the friend that helps all my other friends, or the friend that somebody comes to and I can give you sound advice, but necessarily wasn't applying it for myself. I
wonder, it's interesting. I've never thought about this, but it's always harder to apply it to yourself, right? But that might be good practice for intuition building, right? Like, well, what would I be doing if it was Jenny telling me this story?
Yeah.
Like, what would, because then I'm not, I'm not all my, inadequacies and feels. I'm just trying to be helpful for my friend. So that might be a decent way for people to begin cultivating their intuition by just, well, what would I do for someone else?
So that happens a lot in NLP when you work in that type of therapy area. And you do a lot of work first on yourself, and to get these certifications, you work with other people in these schools and you're videotaped, you get to see yourself. It's very, actually, for someone like me who didn't enjoy, like was very nervous about that process because I felt like I would be judged, what you're talking about. I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want other people to judge me. I did enough judging of myself on my own time. So in NLP, you start to work through the perspectives of other people, and perspectives in general. You learn about how you see the world through your eyes, how you hear the world around you, and how you feel it, not emotionally, but kinesthetically. And I started to realize when I'd have to do these assignments and things, using other people, and then putting those perspectives on how they saw the world, heard things kinesthetically, how that affected them, as well as myself. And one thing I realized in that process was all the poor decisions that I made in my life were auditory. So I'm a very visual person. I'm in the visual arts. Everything, I've always classified myself as someone who's visual. But all of the poor decisions in my life that I made, they were auditory. And I turned off the sound to not listen to my intuition or what the answer should have been for me. Because for whatever the reason was in those scenarios, I just turned down the volume and didn't listen. But it was there and I heard it. But then I was like, no, like a radio. Like, I don't like that song. Right. And now I'm going to make the really bad decision. Now I'm going to pay the consequences for it. So.
And it's funny. I mean, my experience with the like the bad decision voice will keep nagging you to make the bad decision. But the intuition voice is going to lay it out there for you one time and you can choose.
Yes. You're like, speak up, girl. Speak up. You in the back. Come on up. That's like, yeah.
So that's just kind of one of the things you got to deal with the healing process. Yeah. And so it's interesting. So, we grew up in a Greek family. 99% of Greeks, I think, are Greek Orthodox.
Yep.
You've converted to Judaism. And, we grew up in a pretty Jewish area. I had a lot of friends. And from my experience of you're more spiritually Jewish than many of my kind of cultural friends who were born into that. So I'm wondering, I think the healing process is really this trifecta, holy trinity of healing, like, spirituality, personal psychology, and your physical health. So, obviously we're talking about cancer, you're doing stuff. I'm sure you improved your diet and, those kinds of things. You weren't out in the sun all the time, that kind of health stuff. And, we've been talking about some, but how did spirituality synergistically work with you getting to a better place in your life?
So I think anytime you have, specifically when there's something that has to do with health, right? And, it could be terminal. There is a conversation that you can have or choose not to have, but it really becomes to how much time do I have left? What's my legacy of how will people remember me? And what's the imprint that I could leave this world with when I'm no longer here? And I do really firmly believe faith, spirituality, helps guide you in times of uncertainty. And many things are uncertain, even if it's the journey or the task, even in the healing process. You're not really sure where you'll end up in the end. There's not a destination that you reach and it's over, like a marathon is, where you have a beginning and you have an end. This journey for me keeps going. On the spirituality side, it just gives me comfort in trying to explain things that can't be explained, but not blindly accepting it, if that makes sense. So for me, in Greek Orthodoxy, and this is nothing to it, but nothing against Greek Orthodoxy, it's a beautiful religion. I just didn't feel connected to it, where there's a lot, for me, there was too many yes and no answers to things without something behind it that I felt was satisfying or sufficient as a reason to why there was a yes or no to all the questions that I had.
It's like parenting, like, because I told you,
right?
As opposed to like a thing. And so you converted obviously before, your husband's Jewish, you have a Jewish family, you converted. would you say your spirituality portion of Judaism kind of came online more with the cancer stuff? Or did you always initially just right away have a real connection to it spiritually?
So I definitely think it enhanced after a cancer diagnosis. But, you know, when someone as an adult goes in to convert, you spend a lot of time having to do education, things that if you're born into something, your parents may send you somewhere and you may grasp something here and there from a Sunday school, or just by osmosis going week after week, things get kind of planted.
Being yelled at, you know?
Right. And they get planted into your head.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't even understand why you have these certain beliefs, but they become a belief because they've been ingrained over time and put there. When you convert, there's a conscious effort of study and understanding. And also, I think, a very safe space to ask your questions to see if this is even right. You can study and go on and then not finish the conversion process. But for me, it meant a lot, and I put a lot of time into it. My husband joined me and came with me. I think it was also good because as someone that was raised in it, there were things that he knew but didn't necessarily know. And it really wasn't until one session I had with a rabbi that clicked for me. And that was, I kept asking questions throughout the studying process, and we had to go in the evenings and so forth and meet as a group of people who were converting and learning, that I kept asking questions and I wasn't getting a yes or no answer, which is really funny because it's what I ran away from. But yet now I'm asking you to do that again. And then this rabbi turned and said, you know, if you don't mind sharing, what religion did you grow up as? And then I said, oh, Greek Orthodox. And he said, okay. And then he said, yes, it's a very orthodoxy, whether it's Christian or Jewish, because there are levels in Judaism that are different and the studies are quite different. So he said, you are accustomed to asking these questions and getting definitive answers. And I can't give you a definitive answer because I don't know the answer. Like we can, and that's a lot about what Judaism is these debates back and forth. I mean, I'm not talking about Orthodox Jews because that is a very yes or no, cut and dry. Mm-hmm. But when you get into conservative or reform, it's a lot of question after question. I'll ask a question, you give a question back. We're just doing this dance a lot. But I really loved and felt connected to that. It felt more authentic and it felt real. I didn't feel like I was being given like I had like we have the answer and this is the answer whether you like it or not. There was a lot of like, we don't know, but we can talk about it scholarly. We can read about it and you can interpret it this way and I can interpret it that way.
That's an interesting thing because, you know, it sounds like a lot more engagement, right? You know, yes. Like, and so it's not this, I have all the answers. And so then you feel more part of it, right? Yes. As opposed to somebody, you know, I grew up in the same house as you and I'm not, you know, I'm not Christian. I don't have anything against it, but I never just liked some of the answers. It just didn't make sense to me. And there was no way to kind of, talk about it. It was just like, well, that's the answer.
Yeah, I felt very shut down. And I also so growing up Greek Orthodox in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood, and then I went to Catholic school. So like I had a gamut of different, I had exposure. It's not like I didn't have exposure.
Is there a concept of heaven in Judaism?
It depends on who you ask. Some people do not believe in anything like that, and some people do.
And the reason why I ask is, you know, because in general sense, like with Christianity, well, I have a terminal diagnosis. If I just say I'm Christian and now I'm going to heaven, that's very comforting. But, you know, I don't know if I respect it more, but like where you're getting into a spirituality that's not giving you the, yes, there's a heaven, maybe, like that feels, I guess, maybe less easy to just like glom onto, and maybe you had to do more actual thought and thinking about it and engaging with your spirituality in a way that it's not given to you on stone tablets. Right. It's a conversation.
And so there are people that don't understand Judaism a bit, and they'll say every Jew believes when you die, and that's it. and there's nothing past that. That's not true. That's like saying any one group always believes one thing. And that's not the case. There are different scholars, different rabbis, and different sections of Judaism. People believe in different things. And it's okay to believe in those different things. There's not you're excommunicated or you're out or you're not a true Jew if you don't do X, Y, and Z. Now, maybe in the Jewish Orthodox community, that is really separate than the Reform and Conservative because it's very strict rules of ways of living. And it is very yes or no, you believe this or you're not truly Jewish. Like, for instance, I would, and I have a hard time with this, I'm not accepted in the Orthodox world as being Jewish because I converted. So, and in the Jewish faith, one thing is if you have children and you are Jewish, then your children are Jewish by birth. But if you are not Jewish, if, let's say, Michael, my husband, married me and I didn't convert, then our children wouldn't be considered Jewish. However, now within the levels of Judaism, Reform and Conservative consider that me as somebody who's studied and gone through and learned about the Torah. And so
your kids are Jewish, but
a Jewish
Orthodox,
they don't consider me Jewish. And they don't consider my kids Jewish.
So they couldn't become Orthodox Jews if they wanted to.
They can't even go to Jewish day schools that are Orthodox because they're not considered Jewish.
Okay.
So I personally have a hard time with that because I don't think that just being born into something means, I put more work into being Jewish than some of my lovely Jewish friends who are just born by way of being Jewish and don't know as much, have never read the Torah. I've read the whole thing. I've read all 5 books of the Tanakh. I've done works on it when I got back into, that was like kind of my first way back into artwork, was exploring this spirituality visually and reinterpreting stories and feeling okay to read something and apply it in the modern day, or how does this appeal? So when you asked about heaven, just to bring it back there, it's interesting because I have children, right? And now they're old enough to understand or have experienced death in their life and wanting to know, is like coming to me, is heaven real? Is it, I always have a very honest and age appropriate communication relationship with my kids. And I'll tell them what being Jewish means and what Jews typically believe in. And then I'll say, I don't have that answer for you because I've never been and I don't know, but I believe in it. And for me, believing in it makes me feel better. There's a comfort. And that's why I believe in it. I like to believe that there is a heaven. I like to believe that I will see my loved ones again one day, or that there is somewhere positive and great that we will go, because death is really fucking scary. So, I don't want to believe that that's the end. And that's why I choose to believe it. Like, it's very simple. It's not, I'm not coming up with it's because I read it in this book, or I read it because the Bible or the Torah or something says it so. I feel comfort in it, so I want to believe that.
And so Judaism, at least the non-Orthodox part of it, gives you the flexibility to find your own way on that topic.
Yeah.
Which is, as someone who's not overtly religious in that way, it kind of seems like the only topic, right? Like, I'm going to heaven. Right. Yeah. Like, kind
or
of
hell.
Thing. Yeah.
They ask me about hell, and I'm like, I don't know that there's that. I don't believe that there's a fiery underground. I think that's kind of, some of it could be the hell we're living right now. Like, we could be
maybe we're in hell now.
Yeah.
And so you're basically diagnosed at 38. Kind of sounds like 40 is the time that the big kind of psychological and spiritual changes are happening. So, my experience of, calming my nervous system down a little bit, and having this insight that, like, what my chatter is saying is not me. Like, I can be like, oh, that's scared Steve talking or whatever, has radically changed my relationships with my kids, my partners, both business and romantic. So how has the quality, so you have this scary thing happen, you're clearly doing a lot of things, right? You're becoming a coach, you're writing a book, you're like you're doing the Nerissa thing on healing. But like, okay, you do all that stuff. How has your life changed on the important things, your relationships, your internal world, your, everything?
Well, okay. So initially in the work process of it, not immediate change, not anything outside of, I would see these little gems of things that would change, and I would call them like light bulb moments, and I would change. So for me, what would happen wasn't all of the relationships with other people or my external environments. It was internal for me. And I started to change with the relationship with myself. And once that started to change, organically, the way I parented became a little bit different. The way my relationship with my husband, or being able to communicate, which is something it's always been a challenge. Our communication styles are quite different. And how do we make that work and hear each other? While I felt I was always open and receptive, realized maybe I haven't been, like maybe I haven't really allowed that other person to communicate in those ways, or start to understand and make sacrifices versus expecting the other person to sacrifice always for me, because you need to fix it for me. So as my relationship with myself I started to understand it, become a little bit more accepting, less threatening that I had to achieve or do or find or constantly go. I was able to kind of put myself at ease a bit more and learn to be in the moment.
Hey, quick pause before we keep going. If this conversation is landing with you, become part of the Neuro's Journey community by subscribing and following along for more stories like this of courage and the science of healing. I'd love for you to drop a comment below and share what part of the episode hit home for you.
But I would find a lot of little things that would help me do that. So there was never like one moment or time. It's literally like a stew, just kept putting in ingredients and tasting as I go if this is working or not working. And that's, I really think, started with me. And as it started internally, accepting, finding ways to understand myself, I was then able to understand other people and allow them to not want to, like I always wanted to fix everybody. Like once I had something, if I figured it out, like, oh my God, now this cognitive behavioral, this modality works amazing. You need it in your life.
Exactly like that.
I'm like, you gotta try this. Like it became a mission to like not even pay attention to myself anymore. I'm like, I'm healed, but like we need to heal you. And I started recognizing lots of things. Not everybody wants to be healed. Not everybody wants to be heard in the time that you're willing to hear them. You know what I mean? They're not willing to hear themselves. Like, it was very hard for me to let go that everybody doesn't have like the same level of expectation of wanting to fix themselves like I want to fix myself. Like when I was going through this initially, I was like, and I see all the things in my husband that we could fix. You know what I mean? Like, but he wasn't on this journey with me.
There's a lot to fix with that cat. I can tell you that just by now.
So I'm like, we gotta fix everybody. And then I started to slow down, and I was like, just focus on yourself. And when you focus, it's like what they say on the airplane, right? Put your mask on first, and then help someone else. Right. I used to be like, I don't need the mask. I'm going to help you with your mask. And then and now I'm dead because I didn't get the mask. So I realized I started to kind of just come into that awareness. And as I was healing internally, it was naturally starting to make a difference in other relationships and externally, in lots of ways, even with my art. I mean, I left my art for many years and didn't really want to pursue this because I felt like I wasn't going to be good enough or make enough or whatever. It wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. And so when I started changing that dialogue and taking it down, like I didn't need to become, the next Picasso or Van Gogh. I just needed to create some art and like understand like why am I feeling this way? Like, where did that story start? Then I could start to rewire it and work it differently.
And then, so you said, seems like the main relationship you changed was the one with yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that filtered down to your relationships with Mike and the kids, of course.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something like some people don't want to be healed and some people don't want to be heard. Did you notice that different types of people started showing up in your life when you had that ability and you changed? Now all of a sudden,
The people I'm attracting are different.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that completely. I mean, if I look at every relationship with a woman that I've had in my life, like they were the perfect person for me at that time. And I love all of them. And I would only be with Leah, who's my current partner now, because she's where I'm at. And, and nothing against them. They've all grown or whatever. But I guess I'm just wondering, like, as you start, it's not necessarily like lonely or whatever. I mean, you might just have a shift and there might be new people showing up and new friends and new groups. And did that dynamic happen with you?
Yeah, and it's interesting you use the term lonely. It took me a while to understand the difference between lonely and alone. That was a really big pivoting point for me. Probably trying to understand that difference, that I've been a person in relationships, never really been without a relationship. Growing up, I had relationships like, boyfriends here and there, they come and go. I was married once before. That didn't work out. And then from that marriage, I went right into a relationship that lasted a year. Then that didn't work. And then I met my now husband, and we've been together for 13, 14 years. But I had never been alone, like without just me, like learning. I always needed to have something. And part of me felt like, oh, wow, now do I need to be alone and not in any relationship to find myself? And that wasn't the case. It was, I just had to put in the work to uncover what was going on with me. And how I processed the way I processed, like learning about me. And it's funny to say, but I never took the time to learn myself as I'm growing. I just was going, like just living and moving, but without knowledge of who I was. I really wasn't in tune to that. I thought I was. I really did. Like I used to think, because I'm the one that everybody comes to for advice, and I'm this and I'm that type of friend, but I didn't do any work on me. I really didn't. Not in the way that would have made a difference. And that's why I think I lived kind of in a toxic space, because I never listened to it. I just every time I talked to myself, I just shut myself off and turned it down.
Because we were talking earlier about how before you used to make art, you had to have the right music on and all of this kind of setup. And now you appreciate silence, which is really just you being with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Cultivated a relationship with yourself in a way that's not this fearful thing that's beating you up or whatever, and you see different parts of yourself and are able. So by having more silence, then you deepen the relationship with yourself, and then you feel less lonely even when you're alone, I would imagine.
Yeah, even when I'm alone, even if it's silent because there's no external noise, but there's a lot that goes on in my head. My head is very active, but I now find that I drowned out the audio portion of what I'm talking. I mean, we all talk to ourselves all day long, and I'm maybe not out loud, everybody hears the conversation, but we're constantly feeding ourselves information. And I think now when I create art, I very rarely have music on, and I don't do chores in my house or things, or when I'm alone, I don't have the TV run. I don't have external sources. So I hear the I'm having, and I don't ignore them. So I'm also spend a lot of time I go in periods where I have to shut those conversations down, or my little Nerissas are bringing me into an area that I know is not good for me and something I'm thinking or worrying about. Or I just have to talk all of the worry out, like remembering like what's true, what's real at the moment, right? Are we worried about losing something before we've even figured out if we have it yet? And why do I want to experience the loss of something if I don't have to experience it? You know, my dad used to be a person like that. And I used to always think like, God, I wish he would stop being so negative around like the thought of all that could happen that was bad, because I do the same thing. And it would be like, you're experiencing loss or sadness or whatever the negative feeling is twice, because you're doing it before it even happens. And then if it does happen, you're going to experience it in real time because it really literally just happened, and you know, the negative came through.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. I mean, why
wouldn't I, like, I started thinking, why don't I start thinking about like, wow, if I won this award and it would be so amazing, how would that feel? You know, like, no, I never took myself to those areas. It was like, how will we protect ourselves from this loss we could potentially have, right? Or something that could happen, or even with my children, when they have a loss or something experience, I feel deeply for them when they're upset or something happens. I started experiencing it before it even happened. Like they didn't even lose anything yet. Like why go down that? Why simulate something? And then if it does happen, go through it in real time again. Like it's crazy, but I don't do it for the positive. Like, all the amazing things in my life. Wow, this is so great. I'm feeling love and joy and peace. No, like never. So I do that now, where I try to spin the narratives in different ways so that I tend to be a person that goes to the negative. So I've spent years going over to the positive. What would it be like? Let's try out this side.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's being curious that we talked about before. And I think, you know, some of the things you're talking about are trauma responses. And I grew up in your family and, you know, so I know a little bit about you and, you know, the way the brain works, right? It's protecting you. An overwhelming thing happens and your brain changes and it shifts to protect yourself from that. And, you know, frustrating for me is I've just felt like trauma is like fake fear. It's like fear of something that's not actually happening, but you're feeling like it's happening. And it's just like a waste of energy. And when you talk about being present, it's the opposite of present. I mean, I spent 50 years of my life essentially living as a 6-year-old who was abused or whatever, just trying to protect himself from every direction. And much of the things that I feared were not even happening. They were just stories. And then when they happened, I could just move through them just fine. I can handle the situation. So it's kind of a natural response. And I think when you're talking about little Nerissa, you're talking about, you know, identifying with aspects of ourselves and understanding they're not legitimate. Like, you know, this painting is about my life story. I mean, this is a man who abused me and this is a sad little kid, and we'll talk about it a little later. But, you know, I have a lot of sadness for what little Steve went through, you know, like I don't feel like him, like in this moment. But if I think about it, you know, like leaving his house, knowing he's going to be abused and fearing he was going to get killed, all these things, like that's harsh. And I understand, like, okay, that creeps up in my psyche and I have to be like, well, okay, I got it. But like Big Steve's here. I got you. Like, you know, you've been safe since I took the reins, you know, like, and that kind of thing. And so I think it's just a really important development for us to sort of see, to be able to talk to our parts and not think of them as like eternal thing. Well, that happened in the past.
Yeah.
So we've kind of talked about, you know, a lot of things here, and I would assume you're on the notion that you're not healed and your growth is set in stone. So like, what are you working on now? Like what feels alive for you to be a more full version of yourself?
So One thing I'm working on now is it's not necessarily totally new. I've worked on it before. So when I was going through cancer and then I was in a better, or cancer-free at the moment, decided no more treatments. My husband and I were like, okay, maybe you should leave your full-time working job that I had been keeping in the marketing world and spend some time doing like what you love. We have the ability to do it. We're fortunate enough. It's a double income. We can go to one income for a while, and why don't you take some time for yourself? So I did. I appreciated that. I did that, but that was a really hard move for me. And I didn't think it would be so hard. I think it sounds lovely on paper, like somebody's saying don't work anymore and like, I'll pay for the family and like, wow, and do what you love, actually felt like a huge weight on me from that. Again, I didn't feel like, wow, it's opening and broadening. I felt, and the sad thing about it is I recognized that I only identified with the work that I did. I didn't have like an identity other than my job. Like when you meet someone, you're like, so what do you do? And then you talk about their work, or you find a way to connect with what they do and what you do. And then I was like, well, we moved, and then people were like, so what do you do? And I almost felt ashamed. And I was like, I'm an art, I was like, well, I'm an artist, but yet I hadn't really started making the art yet. I hadn't done anything. And I ran out in very typical Nerissa fashion. I need a studio. I need to build, I need to start making a business again. Like I couldn't just be me and kind of have uncertainty, or how are people like, you're stay-at-home mom. Oh, that's such a hard job. So good,
hardest job in the world.
And I'm like, that's not like what I want my identity to be. I kept identifying myself as, what do I do? What is the product that I put it back into the world? So I think trying to figure out, like, I don't have to do something. That doesn't mean and why do we always introduce ourselves with like what we do when we meet someone new? Why can't it be other things? Why is it about a job like that places us somewhere? And now I'm kind of back into the swing where I was teaching for a couple years, teaching art at a high school, high level AP, helping and mentoring students get into college. And then I left it. It really wasn't, I'm actually happy for myself. I felt like I was going to keep sticking with it because I don't give up. But then I was like, I'm 47 years old. Like, I don't need to prove anything. If this wasn't what I thought it was going to be and how I kind of outlined something, I can pivot. Like, I don't need to do this.
Different kind of pivot than we talked about earlier.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And so I now find myself, okay, I left that. I'm not in that category. I'm returning to art full time on my own and enjoying spending the time that I'm not working in the studio, being a mom, being present for my kids, and being that person that, runs our household. And I feel very blessed versus a big weight on me as like, that's a judgment for who I am. I'm like, no, actually, I found success. I can still do something I love. I can still make money off of it. And I still have the freedom and flexibility to be with my family and be present and show up at every game and practice and be there as something I didn't have growing up. I mean, I had parents that worked. They didn't attend any my games and practices or anything like that. And that's okay. That was there. I'm not like, this is not to go down a thing that's wrong. But I was something I always missed as a child, or I would see other parents' places. And I was like, if I have a family, for me, it's very important. I want to be there and be present and there at all those moments. And then especially after getting cancer, I felt like this could be the last moment that I'll ever have, it's a little dramatic, but ever see them again, or so I have that now. And what I am working on now is like, what does it mean to be an artist in 2025, where the world is changing? And I need to get with it to change with them, right? So there's AI, there's NFTs, there's a whole different slew of how art is perceived, sold, used. So I'm kind of in this place now with like finding how do I keep the balance of being the mom that's here for the kids and available for all their needs, which is a lot of needs. And how do I still stay true to keeping, they won't be around forever, that I have to do the jobs and tasks. So I don't want to find myself once they're 18 and off, that I don't have anything for myself anymore, that I still have the art. So I'm grappling now with not necessarily paying attention to how people perceive me, but how do I want to make this work? How do I want my art business to work for me and for my family in a way that I can achieve all the goals of like what I want to do, versus just focusing in on maybe my business.
So if you're talking to, what comes to mind is a younger woman, and, you've had these experiences and you had an opportunity to drop a little wisdom or lesson on them. Like, what would you kind of counsel somebody to, just help them along their path? I mean, I think your path seems very American, right? You have this passion, it's art. It immediately turns into, how do I make money off of it? And then over time you get you have these things, and now you're operating from a place of purpose and passion with your art. I mean, it's, you're helping other people, heal by doing your purpose. So, I think you feel, well, I would say I felt just broken and damaged most of my life. I knew I was pretty good at some stuff and I could operate in the world, but I also was just like, there's something fucked up about me, and now I just think like I had some experiences that changed my brain, and I've done some work to change it back. So is there any advice you would give to a younger version of yourself, or lessons learned?
So one major thing that I do say and use a lot with people, or I've used in workshops, is that broken crayons still color. Love that line, especially as an artist. It's so true. So there's nothing like a fresh pack of crayons or materials that are fresh, like that haven't been used yet, right? They always feel great, like as an artist going out and getting some new supplies. It's that box of broken crayons that you can pick up. They're just as good as the brand new ones. They look different. They feel different. They don't color different. It's still the same person that is using that instrument to create something. Whether it's broken, that red crayon is broken into 3 pieces, and you got the tip, the butt, the end, the middle. You still find new ways to use that material. Might be even better than when you had it all in one piece. So I think that if there is something that's broken, it doesn't mean that it can't still be used. Where I think that most people feel when something is broken, like it can't be fixed. It can't be put back together. And it might not be fixed, not in the way that you originally think that you want to fix it, but something totally new could come out of it. And I think it's just about expanding and being open to uncertainty. And if you can be open to that, there's possibilities for so many things you don't even know exist.
Yeah. It's funny because, when you were talking about the broken crayon thing, I was thinking about the Buddha and Buddha, that you can't make your life on broken crayons. Like they're going to break. It's the nature of human existence, is there's suffering. And the suffering might be that the crayons aren't perfect anymore. But now you have more of them. You got different angles and different approaches, and there's a lot more creativity potentially with a box of broken crayons than there would be with perfect ones. And we're all going to be broken a little bit. And
we all are.
Yeah. There's 100% chance. So we'll talk about this. Let's take a little break. I just want to tell you, I love you so much. I feel so blessed to just have this time and research my niece a little bit and come to your mansion in Florida and purchase some art. And it's just been an awesome experience. And I feel so blessed to have you and my family.
I love you too. Thank you for sharing too. A lot of the stuff very difficult and very sad to hear. I feel sad that you had to experience what you experienced. And I will say, I was excited to create a piece too for you because that also allowed me to process what I had learned that I didn't know about you. Some things I knew about and other ones I didn't. And it allowed me to also kind of go through a process and processing what had happened to you. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So, and a lot of you don't know the story of my life, but this is a painting that Nerissa created from interviews with me about things that have happened. And maybe you can give a little process of it. I would say for me, the reason why I was driven to it is your father died in November and we were at the funeral. And I think you showed me a piece that you did for somebody whose child had died.
Yeah.
And it was a butterfly and it was not quite as, it didn't look like this, but I was like, wow, and I really think it's important when you've had a difficult childhood, the road is long, and to look at it as a story. And why this is called the Neuro's journey. It's the hero's journey into your own mind, to just go in there. And I think by making it a story, it gives me a little freedom to not always be perfect, right? The hero doesn't walk into the forest, kill everything immediately and walk out. I mean, that's not how it works, right? There's struggle, and there are times when it feels like it's never going to end and all that kind of stuff. And so I thought, what a great opportunity for healing for myself to make this an image and see it. And we could talk. I'm interested in you, kind of walking us through the name of it, how you paint, what its meaning, and then, bringing into it some of your concepts as art as healing, and I know there's a differentiation between arts and health, and you can talk about that. But, I guess when I first heard those terms before all this came out, I kind of assumed that it was only doing some art. And maybe you don't have to be a great artist like you. I could paint some things and that would be helpful. But honestly, viewing art, and especially this one, because I own a lot of art and I collect it and I like it and I attribute some symbolism to it. But this is my personal story, of addiction and abuse, and hopefully some, Phoenix rising in it. And so I'm interested to hear about it, the name of it, kind of, what you were doing here, some of the symbolism, as well as, the kind of sciencey concepts of art to heal.
Okay. So, like you mentioned, we sat down a couple times, probably 2 sessions that we sat, and you shared with me, and obviously we're related, so I know we had talking points before we sat down as a piece of art. But really hearing and learning from you about the journey you've had and what you've undergone and the experiences and where you are today, that how do we make that visual, right? And where you are today also, and hopefully, right, will not be the same place you are in 10 years from now. So this is really a visual that captures the moment in time now in this journey, not necessarily where the journey will take you, but I think in a healthier spot where you've progressed and you have healing, right? It hasn't stopped, but you've had a good amount of healing and put a lot of work into you. So how do we make that visual, right? So when we talked, I came up with a couple concepts, 2 to be specific, and then we went down one path. We were actually almost going to just go towards that linear, if you recall, that had all the things kind of mapped out with an eye in the center, which I'm glad we didn't, because that actually seemed like more of an easy way out. But then this work has a lot of symbolism in a lot of ways, and I'll run through it. But really what I saw was a portrait, right? Of you. This is you. No,
All right.
yeah. So a portrait. And so the lion, right? Something very fierce and proud and strength and protection and a powerful animal, the king of the jungle, as the main headspace here. And in its mane has these flames from the phoenix rising, which is a great symbol, that to be overcoming something and you come out stronger, but you've come out from some sort of adversity. And the flames in the mane are what ground the phoenix rising at the top. In the mane itself, it also has lots of triangles. It's a pattern. So in art, in general, art is made up of, there's principles in it, and then there's elements of art. Elements of art are the basic ingredients. So imagine if you were making a cake. As an artist, when you say, like when you were talking before, like, oh, well, making your own art versus viewing it, there's a reason why the viewing makes sense. And the viewing makes sense because if you have an artist who actually creates something and understands what the ingredients are that make a piece of art for someone to be attracted to, they follow those elements and those elements are brought in. One element of art is pattern. Pattern attracts people. And it also calls for movement in a piece. So there is a pattern of these triangles, and triangles have a lot of symbolism around them. Even where some areas look like it might be a square, it's actually two triangles that come together that make that shape. So it is technically the foundation of it made through triangles in the mane. Also, in the nostrils, we have a 7 because you had shared with me you identified in the enthusiast on the Enneagram. And that type of personality type. So I threw that into one nostril. And then the sea glass as the crack for the addiction that you were experiencing.
And so just one thing about, so type 7 in the Enneagram is in the fear triad. So it's a way of organizing yourself when you're deeply fearful to look forward. And it really served me well to kind of get out of the dark part. But at the end of the day, it's the underlying part of it is fear. And then, I was a crack addict. That's all I know.
Well, what's interesting you say that. So it's good that you brought that in. And I love that dialogue. That's why the 7 is placed in the nostril versus anywhere else. I could have positioned it somewhere and it could have been in there. But it's there because of the sense of smell. And when you say you smell fear, that's coming towards you. Obviously, and then crack, well, we smoke it, but also comes from cocaine.
Oh, I snorted a lot of it too.
So there you go.
Yeah, I was a good addict.
and balance each other out. So that's kind of in the nostril area there, and there's that reason for that. We have the eyes here, so like the evil eye or the mati that we say in Greek for protection, and all of my work deals with protection. Even the lion here is about a protector, right, of its pride. I'm most concentrated in a lot of my work with the concept of love, acceptance, and protection, but protection being from 3 areas. 1, from something greater than ourselves. 2, that there is this notion that security from our community, that we should be protecting each other as tribes in our general or local communities. And then from within, we're accountable to protect ourselves, right? So we have something greater, the community, and then from within. And that's really what the mati here, or the evil eye, is. Yes, it wards off the ill will of somebody else, but also it's taking that accountability for yourself, which is why it's in the eye of this lion itself, is that there is the greater, the community of the pack or the pride, and then also internally to take care of yourself. The other eye is kind of this eye of pain, the pain of experience of the many experiences that you've had, and why it's in that color, right? It's also in this color and done this way to reflect off the butterfly, because the butterfly stands for transformation and growth. And a butterfly has 4 phases in its life before its life ends. And so to begin, the butterfly is the end being of that. And that is the final transformation of growth into beauty. It goes from a really ugly chrysalis thing all the way in. We get the caterpillar and then back cocooning again. It's kind of a very fascinating insect and what it goes through. And that is tied to the pain. So through that pain, we can still have transformation. And that's why those colors are the same. Just like the body of the butterfly here, the main part, which stays in terms of its transformation, ties into the same fabrics I used as a child. Because as a child, you're foundation and rooted in who you are, but that doesn't mean there can't be change. But there still be intrinsically who you were born as that is still there and with you always. The brain itself also has this kind of magenta-y membranes in the brain to show that the brain doesn't have to stay the same. We can change it. It is like this neuroplasticity that has the ability to rewrite, re-script, just like it can be traumatized by something. It can be healed and come back. And that's very powerful. Know that, if you cut your arm off, most likely can't sew it back on and you have the working arm all the way you had. But your brain is so powerful and such an amazing, fascinating part of the body. It's always transforming. So why those colors are all intertwined like that there in the body and the child. Then we kind of go up into the helmet, I call it, of the head. And the reason this helmet is also another type of protection that we wear to protect our head from something happening. So that's why it has this kind of a look. But the helmet is made of what I would say like the tree of life. And the tree of life has lots of biblical references to it, trees in general, etc. But in this, we have a side that's good, a normal kind of tree. You'll notice there's no life to the tree in the sense that there's no leaves or extra branches. But on this side, those branches are guns, and that kind of speaks to the mass shooting that you witnessed and were there for. And the good side and the evil side, with the bad man here, the abuser in your life, and also you could take this in a couple ways. It could be the bad man and the abuser, but it could also be you when you abused yourself. So there's like really when you weren't taking care of yourself. So it's kind of like a double-edged way of viewing this. But it's also the reason also I have him standing grounded and the child very up in the tree is the child is protected and in a kind of a crouched position that also gives a little level of defense or protection, but it's supported and overcomes. So this never takes hold and rises above the child. The child will always stay above this. So there is that ability to return back to safety and security and finding yourself and accepting that inner child there. The background has a little bit, I'm going to say, of a youthful look to it versus maybe some more of the sophisticated ways that the art is applied down here. And that's also intentional. Music's been a huge part of your life. So there's music notes in there. The stars in the sky is kind of this universe. And I feel like in our minds, we go into our minds a lot, whether it's daydreaming, nightmares, things that happen, but it's a universe of whatever we're creating in our mind. Like the one space no one can ever be in or know what's happening in here. The only person is actually you, right? Unless you share something, I don't know. You could be thinking about anything at this moment and tell me you're thinking about something, but I don't know that's what's really happening. I just trust it. So I liked this kind of a youthful play of the background of the universe because the experiences you have are extremely impactful and serious in nature, from abuse to mass shootings, and abuse, not just the sexual abuse, but other abuse in the home, a lot of things going on that are heavy. And they didn't want this to be heavy because I feel like where you're turning, you've gone through the heaviness of reliving and to remember and sequence these events in your life and what they meant and where they are. But there is a positive outcome to it, right? And, the journey is difficult, but then there is a lightness to it, which is why that it's lighter in there and it's more of a day scene with stars than it is a night scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also in daytime, we tend to find more security and safety. At night, sometimes there's that like intrinsic, it's night and it's evil and it's like dark and you're scared. But in the day, we don't have that as much, right? Even as kids. So I kind of thought of this as a little bit more of going back and forth between adult and kid mindset. The color scheme with regards to, and the black pattern here of this kind of quilty, lacy look was to create these holes. And these holes are not perfect. They are not manufactured to be perfect circles of any kind. It's to show the gaps and the see-through and to create kind of a dimension for it. Meaning, there was a darkness that's there. There's been a web that you've sat in for many years of your life. But through that, there are many holes. Like the web isn't sewn up and everything is a solid color or background. There's a thread through and there's a weaving. And that even though you're in a very good place of healing now, there's still a lot more to go. It's not over. And while you're healing, these things that have happened to you don't go away. So I didn't want a piece to be daunting over the experiences visually, but I also wanted it to pay homage to the fact they existed and they're there, but yet you've overcome it. So I use this color scheme a lot. Purples I always associate purple. Sometimes I see colors with people and I associate purple a lot with you. And purple also has a very royal feeling to it. And I think there is kind of a level of celebratory nature in it that when somebody goes through and does a lot of the work and they get to a good point to be able to freely talk about something, to express how they feel, there's no repression in it at that point. Like that should be celebrated. We don't celebrate that part of the journey enough. And it's so daunting to go through these healing journeys. And then right when you think you've got it, something happens, something else in life, but triggers something. And then you feel like, God, I didn't fucking have it. Like, I thought I had it. But you did have it for that one thing. It doesn't mean that it doesn't come back. So I wanted it to pay an honor to those things that really happened. And we have to say that those things existed for you, but yet those things that existed don't define you. So therefore the journey you're taking, they're just stepping stones in that process. And where you will come out is somewhere more powerful than you've ever been. It only gets better. You can't go backwards.
Right.
So that was kind of part of the reason for the color choices. Also a lot, I have dots in here a lot, and dots are a very pivotal point. They give you a point of origin. And so there isn't one or something specific. They're all over because I feel like you've had lots of different points of origin where you've bounced from. And I think you'll continue to have them. It doesn't necessarily mean in a negative way, but as you continue to go through the journey. So there's a lot of reasoning. And then there's a jewel in the phoenix eye, also a jewel in each eye because they're all kind of interconnected. And then some of the pieces of the butterfly kind of fabrics that I use are also in the Phoenix Rising. And that's because the Phoenix Rising also has transformation and growth and things are all, so everything is kind of connected here. Somehow there was a thread through of all of that. And the title of this is Hineni. And Hineni literally translates in Hebrew to here I am. And they're very powerful words spiritually, because basically they are saying you're showing up there is a call to service for you, and you don't need to know what that is. You just need to know, are you accepting it? And it sounds like you've accepted it and that you're finding what that is. So you've shown up, here I am. And I feel like it's so powerful in so many ways. But it's like, here I am, but like all that encompasses who I am right here in that moment. And I felt like it was very fitting for your journey and like where you are now and how you're showing up to yourself, to your community, and then even as your spirituality has grown.
You know, it's interesting to kind of see this because, you know, you're talking about a piece of art, but it's like my life's story, which is, you know, a pretty unusual thing. I mean, I'll tell you just the very first thing that I noticed is the kid. And, you know, I think we talked about a little bit the parts work and, you know, it was that like, that it struck me as lonely and sad a little bit. And I just was like, oh, that was actually a big part of my experience. And, you know, and it kind of flooded back a little bit. And, you know, the lion thing is really, it's a really cool sort of representation because, you know, I traveled in Africa after college and seen a lot of lions out on the prairie, and the big lion, you know, the man, you know, has got the mane, just kind of like growls and sets the stage for people. And, you know, we talked about this stuff a little bit, but like when you have the nervous system that I had, right? I mean, abuse in a lot of different ways. I stuttered so much I couldn't talk. It was just a lot of things. That is a real responsibility because if you don't control it, you can hurt people. I mean, you know, I firmly believe the man that abused me was abused himself. And so there is this notion of taking that something that could have been predatory and aggressive to use power, but also stillness to be like, no, like I'm protecting now, you know, and I'm going to let my kids have a different life than I had. And then just in general, as this story goes, we kind of talked about with you, like, what are you, you know, working on? And, you know, through trauma healing and all that, I mean, I've lost like 50 pounds over a few years. I haven't drank for 3 years. I'm not sober. I just don't do the things that are bad for me. But I've done a lot on my personal psychology and my health. And those things are significantly better. And my nervous system has just calmed down to a point where spirituality is starting to leak in. And, you know, it's differently framed for me. It's these glimpses of feeling like I'm a part of everything. And they're fleeting. But, you know, in the same way that maybe somebody might get comfort from heaven that we talked about, like I get a comfort. I was like, oh, okay, like I'm part of this source stuff. Like I'm going back to that, you know. And so, you know, I'm on like a medicine path. So I, you know, use psychedelics as part of my healing. And it's been a really kind of linear path. You know, I've gone through just being so fucking scared, you know, I mean, I look like, you know, like shitting my pants before the ceremonies because I was just so nervous. And then taking big doses and nothing happening, but it being like, you know, just letting go. And that's the whole thing. And then there was just deep sadness in some of them. And I'm starting to get to the point where it, you know, the last one that I had, the messaging was more like, you know, you don't need to change a lot of what's going on. Like just keep doing what you're doing. And I think what's kind of the next phase of the three things I said are important: spirituality, personal psychology, and health. Like spirituality is the one that I'm like least evolved on, or least farther down the path. And it's like this phoenix is also kind of rising out of my little world, right? And it's sort of like, to me, when I see it, is like, yeah, that's what's happening, where I can cultivate my spirituality. You know, my abuse happened at a church. It wasn't a priest. But I just rejected church and, you know, and all of it. And we had a very religious family. And, I read about Holocaust survivors that like at a much higher rate, they lost their religion than other people. Like, I don't know what the numbers are, but 5 times as much if you were a Holocaust survivor. And that really gave me a lot of sadness. Like, I'm comfortable with my choice, and I'm comfortable with everyone else's choice. But I wish that choice would have been mine, as opposed to somebody kind of taking it away from me. And so this, like, to me, just really is an inspiration, to be like, how do I want to be as a person? Like, I have to work on myself all the time to, it's not like healing is not an event, it's a process. And, if I stop, I backslide. I mean, I wear a device to stimulate my vagus. And I do all kinds of things like all the time to maintain myself, because I know if I don't, then I'm kind of going backwards. And this to me is inspirational about sort of my past and, the little boys above the abuser, and they're all there. But there's something rising out of that that's even kind of more important and bigger than my little world. And so, there is also like this feeling of, part of my work with the abuse part, there's uncovering it, there's kind of forgiving that person, but there's also being like, but fuck you, you're not get to be part of my like psyche anymore. And I've done like work with hypnosis and stuff to like find in my body like where the remnants of that person still remains. And so it's interesting to like see it here, because it's more like that's more of a symbol than a man,
Right.
And so like it gives me a little bit of just, as much as I'm moving forward, I still need to like, listen to myself. Like, is it coming out? Is my intuition telling me there's some other stuff to uncover? And I've mostly moved towards, let's move towards spirituality. But I guess just overall, and, I've only seen this yesterday for the first time, but this will live in my house. And for somebody that's had a lot of trauma, for me personally, there's been a huge amount of healing by turning it into a hero's journey. It gives me the ability to kind of relax on myself, because it's not always easy. And seeing this just, I think, is an inspiration to myself. And it'll be interesting to see, like, it's going to reside in my house with my kids who know this story, and my partner who obviously does. And I'm excited to kind of feel the healing over time. I know works of art that I've had for 30 years, I walk around them now, and every time they're in my house, I still get a little feeling off of them. They like impact me on a day-to-day basis. And this is something so unique in my story that I would highly recommend all traumatized people get a custom piece of art from my niece. Let's sell some art. but no, this was, the experience of kind of going through it and having you ask me different questions, because you're coming at it, you knew some of my story, but didn't know all of it. And you're coming at it from like a different frame. And so it, like, those questions and answers are kind of like got me moving too. And like, because you just asked them in a different way than I had thought about it, or something like that. So, for me in healing, part of it is that I get to see it, and the process of actually going through and making it and seeing like a preliminary sketch and then seeing the final piece, all of that feels really important. And I just feel really blessed. We've both been blessed monetarily that, we could do this. And, I wonder, your traumas are different, but how does working on a piece like this, I'm your uncle and we're very close and all of that, but, you do this for a lot of people you don't know, right? Mm-hmm. So like, does doing you're making this art, the intent really is to help their healing.
Correct.
But does creating it create more healing for you?
Yeah, completely. And I hadn't really thought about that too much until I was working on your piece. So I've never done a piece for somebody I've known. So this was very interesting, and it was a different way to approach it. Usually there's a separation, right? So I have someone's story, or I have what it is they're interested in wanting to make visual or say, whatever that narrative is. But I'm not as closely connected, literally, like they're not a family member, they're not someone I have like known in the past in any specific way. It's purely really like a new relationship. So it's lovely when someone feels they can open up and share in that way. I think for me, there's a few things, and it'll be interesting because I have a question for you about it too, is so in the beginning, I showed you like a digital rendering, just in kind of black and white, like no color to it. We knew like, you knew nothing about the materials, color so much a little. I sent you kind of like, here's some colors I'm going to use if you're okay with it.
Which honestly, I didn't even look at. Once I saw the black and white thing, I was,
so you had an idea, but it is quite different than as a digital black drawing when you get it like this. So when it starts as a digital for me, this is to answer your question, I don't know what the outcome of it's going to be until I start putting it down. And there's that process for that. That for me is huge because I'm a person that's always in, I'll say my previous life before a turning point, planner, need to know exactly what A to Z is going to look like, how it unfolds, how long is each step process going to be, and what is the end result. So for me, it's given me freedom and ability as an artist to be okay with unknown. I have an idea. It's not totally unknown, but I have an idea, but I don't know. Like if I had said, this wasn't what I was thinking in my head when I had the sketch, I just had the sketch and was like, are you good with this kind of some main symbolism? And then you gave me the freedom, which also, inspires and validates confidence in me to say, okay, go ahead.
Right.
I don't know what it's going to look like till I see it in the end. And then I move with that, right? And I didn't know I would have triangles. I didn't necessarily know how the colors, or I would map out the body of this matches with the child like this until I start moving in the process of it. So there is a level of kind of enjoyed and peaceful and inspired uncertainty when I'm making it of where I'm going with it. But I have a very good gut instinct when I have something. So even for years when I was starting out, I would walk away, or I was looking at fabrics and papers and things to be able to use, and something wasn't working, I would step away. Then I would return and I would come back. When I returned, it was like, oh, no, here it is, and then I found it. So instead of pushing or making something fit into something the way I want, I just let it all kind of let them fall where they do. And yes, I do use the elements of art, and I do pay attention to those things that make sense, of colors that go together or psychological responses that can happen. I do know about art, but I try not to let that override what the outcome will be. So when I'm working, the process of this is so important because remember I spoke about earlier, process was never something for me that I wanted to sit with. I wanted to just get to the product. So the not knowing exactly is really important for my own therapy in allowing me to just trust and believe in my gut. And now it has become like second nature after years of like being like, just walk away, then come back.
Right.
Which I've never done before. I'm like, can't walk away from anything. An argument, it was like, let's just talk it out until we have a resolution and like it's solved, because I can't stand like, uncertainty.
Right.
But I am able to take a little uncertainty here and now just go with a flow, and I trust that it will come, and it does every time. So
yeah, it's interesting because at first when I saw the two images, the other one was much more simple and direct, right? It was kind of just like I don't know how you would call it,
like
geometric,
geometrical, yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's it. And then as I looked at that one more, it was just like, oh, like once I decided on that one, which was just like my intuition saying, this could be potentially a lot worse or a lot better, but I was like that, that's the one I want. And then I kind of stopped paying attention. Like I didn't even look at those colors that you sent me, honestly, because I was like, this is what I want to do. And like, I've chosen, Nerissa because she's a great artist and, and I love her and all of that, and just want to roll with it. And it doesn't look anything like I thought it would look on it. I mean, I had no idea, but it was a black and white image with very sharp lines. And so it was, it looked very different from that. And I also love that image. I mean, that image was like striking to me in what I chose. And so it's cool to see, we talked about AI and art and stuff, like, that image seemed like it was somehow made
the process allows me to focus on the process versus an end result, which is the whole therapeutic side of it. And I have a pattern of that my whole life, not really wanting to pay attention to the process, probably because I've grown up in a capitalistic society with a capitalistic family. Nothing wrong with it, but we're all about the end product and not how do you get there. So for me, knowing that I will still create a great end product, I don't worry anymore about the end product. And when I focus on the process, it comes out, and I trust in that. And that for me has been a journey on many levels.
It's interesting because a little bit of like what I am talking about with like framing this as a journey is it gives you this freedom not to like skip to the end, right? Like I'm never going to be to the Garden of Eden and the Buddha or whatever. I'm going to always be doing it. And there's going to be, like you said, some of this stuff is not easy. I mean, some of sexual abuse, of talking about it, and is reliving it, and those times are hard.
Yeah.
But it's just a part of a story now. And I can look at it like it's a process. Like, I had my son the other day, like asked me if he was acting in a way that made me kind of angry or grumpy at him. And that really hurt because I'm trying to, like, the whole purpose of all this shit is but I mean, I love the fact that he's, 16 and can bring that to me in a calm way.
But also that you can accept it.
Yeah.
That he feels safe enough to say that to you, knowing that you can accept talking about that. Because maybe in the past you might have not been safe enough to bring that up. I don't know.
I would have found some way to make him wrong,
right?
And I also know enough about myself to be like, I'm probably better at like responding tomorrow morning, because I know just if I get someone talks to me, if I then sleep on it. And, so it's like, there's nothing guru about me. I don't have any certifications or degrees or whatever. I have attained some level of my nervous system calming down, and I know that's happened. And I just want for other people to feel this way. I mean, I know what it's like to have a different kind of nervous system, and I know what it's like to feel like I do now, which is just more like regular. I think, it's not like some like enlightened state, but it's like, I heard this analogy, I think it was Paul Conti, where he's like, trauma is sort of like if your house had a fire and it rewired itself to have the smoke alarms just go off all the time, even when there was no smoke. And so, yes, you would be safe from fire in that example. I mean, the smoke alarms, you'd be constantly looking around and you constantly check for fire. and, there'd be no fires for years and years and years. And my nervous system feels like the smoke detectors aren't firing off anymore. And so I can just sort of be more calm and more relaxed. And it's giving me an opportunity to get a purpose. I never had this space, I thought, for a purpose in my life. And I, don't think I really could get to any sort of spirituality because there was just so much shit going on internally.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. I mean, we're both sort of talking about stop fixating on the end point and just look at it as like what I am doing now. And you're creating art for yourself to support your family, to support healing. I'm trying to do the work that I'm doing to like heal myself so I can be a better man and a better father and partner and uncle and all those things. Almost every strategy I adopted when I was young, I had to learn the opposite to figure out. So, what a great conversation, and to do it in your home and with you is just really meaningful to me.
Aw, it's been very meaningful for me. But like I said, I haven't had anybody I have had type of relationship with as a client to be able to know them also, which is a different element, right? Because I didn't want anything to cloud where I was trying to go. So trying to still keep it, but that was a preconceived, some potential challenge that could happen that never happened for me. So, yeah. But I did enjoy it, and I'm very thankful that you felt safe and allowed me to be a part of this process. And I feel like I love it. I love that I'm able to create something for you in that way.
Yay. And if somebody wants to buy some art from you or interact with you in some way, how do they do that?
So they first can go to my Instagram, where most of my work is located. And that handle is and then it's Nerissa, N as in Nancy, ERISSA, B as in boy, ALLAND, art. Nerissa Balland art is my handle. And then nerissaballand.com is my website, where there's more information or shows or things if you're in the South Florida area, or even if you're in Barcelona this summer, I'm going to be in a show. Has exhibitions and events of where I'll be at. But definitely feel free. One thing I'd love to say about commissioned work is that a lot of people don't understand one thing, or they might be scared of, is the cost of a commissioned work. It doesn't cost anything more to commission a piece that's customized and special with your narrative than it is to purchase a piece that I might have just created for myself or a show and am selling it. It's really just a formula in terms of size and how that sorts out. And I do pride myself on working with different budgets and so forth. So understanding a budget or what you have to spend, and then finding a way to see how that fits in is one way to make something customizable for you.
Yay. All right. I love you, Nerissa.
I love you too.
Thank you so much for joining the Neuro's Journey podcast. If this episode landed, share it with someone who needs to hear it. The real medicine is in the connection, and this community only grows when we reach for each other. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. And if you have a minute, leaving a rating really helps more people find this work. And keep showing up for your own journey. Every small act of courage matters, for you, for the people around you, and for all of us. I am so grateful to be walking this path with you.